love. Community love. Can I say something? Absolutely. Who's that? They're all dressed in red. She's gonna trouble the water.
You know, from a distance, you kind of couldn't see it, right? You couldn't see it at all. You got a little bit closer and it was sort of a line, right? You had to actually get up close to see what was actually being said. This is a little bit of an experiment.
Even though I'm graduating, when I walk that stage, that will be the last time that I'm on campus. I am a film student here and I'm currently in the works of concepting out a few documentaries unearthing things like this that go on at Evergreen, as well, not just racial discrimination, but ableism, really just everything this institution has been sweeping under the rugs since I've been here and before, and probably will be in the future. So yeah, get ready for me to burn this place to the ground. I've got a lot of matches and I'm ready.
Naima, during these past 2 years, you have modeled the kind of teacher that I will strive to be. I remember being so in awe of you, my first black teacher. I remember being so excited, and I would run to you with this excitement and all of my questions about life, and you would look me dead in the face, blink, and just say, okay. And then you'd let me find the answer to the questions on my own. I can see clearly now the
I asked my students to take a lot of personal and intellectual risks in their processes of examining their relationships to race and racism. I was consistently impressed with the integrity that they brought to that work and frequently overwhelmed by the problem of doing this work in a way that felt as though I was alone. I have a phrase called black girl in the wilderness, right? Sort of to describe this profound isolation we feel as these sort of unruly, loudmouth women with like the wrong hair and a lot of attitude, and a rabid dedication in our work towards education as an actually liberatory practice. 2 options, go inside, go home. Right, we both teach in places we get in trouble sometimes. Or we don't get in trouble until we're actually doing what we say we're gonna do, then we get in trouble.
That's it, I don't have time for anything else. I am too tired, this shit is literally gonna kill me.
Do you have time for an apology?
Go inside or go.
When I say overwhelmed, I mean that by winter quarter, I was actually breaking out in hives on a daily basis. Like, that's not a metaphor, hives. Through a combination of rage and sorrow at the fact that my group of mostly white students of the arts at radically progressive Evergreen State College had never before been really challenged to consider their relationship to race in an academic setting. Not all people, but people in response said, oh, it's like this kind of reversal, right? You're sort of taking what white folks have said to you and kind of turning it around, and that's part of it. But it's not kind of so simple as that for me. It really is about having this experience in my life that's very real of kind of wondering, like, what is that? Like, what is this white thing? What does it mean to you? Like, I actually want to know, because it kind of baffles me how difficult it seems to actually engage it with any kind of sincerity.
Look all around, there's nothing but blue skies.
This is a little bit of an experiment. The way that I have approached the reading of this book, I've read it a few different venues, is to have the reading be done by the room. When you hear your number, say your thing, say it loud. Okay, 1.
How do you know you are white?
I feel pretty strongly in my work as an artist and as someone supporting students who are interested in art, that we need to not just learn the skills of how to sort of create something, how to, in my case, working with cameras and working with various kinds of media equipment, and et cetera. That's a really important skill. But I believe 100% that if we're not sort of learning about the power that we hold in the context of what we create, if we don't learn to kind of understand the conscious and unconscious biases about what we think is beautiful, what we think is correct, what we think is appropriate, what we think tells a good story, right? Then those tools are just tools, right? Then you become a tool of the tools. Is that 1? 2.
Have you always been white?
I'm someone who works at this college. I also live in this community. And you know, in this last year, there have been several really intense, incredibly racist incidents that have happened in this community. In particular, the shooting of 2 young men, black men, by an Olympia police officer. And one of the things that brought up for me in witnessing it and dealing with my sort of sadness and sorrow and anger about that incident was sort of watching the extent to which I saw a community that had a lot of skills and capacity to talk about racism and injustice that happened far away, right? Issues far away, but not a lot of skills about how to deal with what's happening in our immediate space. 3.
When did you realize you were white?
You know, I grew up in a town very much like this on the East Coast, a small college town, very similar, white and liberal and nice, also complete with a stronghold of the KKK.
Those fuckers are gone, right? What's up, dude? How's it going?
Pretty good. That's pretty cool, huh? There was like 10 of them.
I know.
A lot of white folks unable to sort of see themselves for themselves. A lot of people very invested in talking about the bad things over there. 4.
How did you realize you were white?
I walked too close to these 3 cops.
Right.
And they got me and took me to the ground and started beating me on the back.
Right.
And I said, look. Press. And this one said, I don't give a shit about that. Bip, 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 bip.
5.
How often do you think about being white?
And
With the billy clubs?
With the billy clubs, yeah. Hit me. But they were very precise. At that point and I'm really clear about this, they were very precise at that point. They weren't hitting me in the head. They weren't hitting me in the kidney. They hit me on the legs and on the back. Places that wouldn't leave scars, but I would certainly feel.
Right.
And an officer, a superior officer came over and told them to stop. And instead, they pulled me. That's where the whole business with the scars, because I had all this glass.
Right, from when the bottle. 6.
How often do you talk about being white?
And one of the ways that people responded when I would say that or have that issue would say, well, there's no black people here that we need to kind of consider that issue. And I was sort of like, like that's strange. So for me, being really conscious of how I participate in conversations about racism and other issues of unequal power has been a matter of my personal survival. Right?
This shit is literally gonna kill me.
Right? My ability to speak and my ability to be heard is a matter of my personal survival. And so for me, this is about my teaching, but also my life. 7.
Do you talk about being white with your friends?
So what are you doing right now? I'm not talking about training. I'm talking about the fact that you put our lives in danger. Do you know how many black students and brown students live on this campus? In the woods, in the dark? While y'all at home, kissing kids, watching TV, cooking dinner?
We need to remind that we're in Olympia, where white supremacy is at an all-time high, and y'all sent out an email that literally told all these white people, told all these white people, hey, all these people of color are aggressors. This is exactly what the email says to them.
The labor we had to do to protect ourselves and to tell people that we needed protection, that's not being compensated in any way. That's not a job we've been paid for. That's a job y'all would have paid for.
8.
What do white people talk about?
As far as students of color, I'm a student of color. I don't share a lot of the same problems that the younger generation does. But the one thing I can tell you that I have noticed just from my own observations and having to deal with the younger generation. They're angry. They need to, I would like to see them come from a different place other than anger, because you can't get anything done when you're angry. No one can listen to you, and no resolution is going to be good enough when you are simply angry. Not saying they don't have reasons to be angry, because maybe they do, I don't know. But what I do know is that it is a problem in how they are presenting themselves. And that's something that hopefully they will change in order to effect some change.
9.
What do white people think about? You're sick. You put in a lot of goddamn effort. You've listened to these people talk shit to you for 7 fucking years. So no, I don't want to hear about it. So what I'm saying is what I said at the start. You can go inside and you can listen to the students and what they're trying to say, or you can take your ass home. That is it.
Can you just sort of explain what's going on there?
Yeah, Naima in that clip is, and the clip goes on for a fair piece, but she's dressing down 2 other faculty members who are there and telling them that effectively they need, if my understanding of the clip is right, she's telling them that effectively that they either need to go in and make themselves answerable to this mob that's been ruling the campus at that point, or go home. That those are their only 2 choices, and she says that, you know, they are the problem.
10.
Do you think white people are the same everywhere?
It's preposterous, and I should say that the same faculty member has accused me of racism once very directly in a faculty meeting. I said, you know, somebody at some point should check on the question of whether or not I actually am a racist. I think you might be very surprised. I was then told by the chair of the faculty that this was not the place to defend myself, and I said, that's fine. Where is the place to defend myself? And then Naima spoke up and said, you shouldn't expect a venue in which to defend yourself. The president and provost sat perfectly silently through this interaction.
11.
Do you think there are different kinds of white people?
Precisely 1 year before the talk with George at the Longhouse, Naima Lowe sent this email to the all staff and faculty DL. Incident of anti-black racism impacting our students. Dear colleagues, I'm writing this note with a heavy heart after several black students of mine approached me today about an incident targeting them here on campus. The student group Black Focus has been an active force of support and engagement for black students, faculty, and staff on campus and their allies. They have planned a wellness rally on campus with the stated mission of, quote, resistance of the systems of white supremacy, end quote, on campus and beyond. They put up posters all over campus in support of their work, and as of this morning, every single one of those posters has been taken down. As some of you know, this comes after many similar incidents of posters and event flyers being defaced or torn down, largely, though not only targeting black students. It's worth noting that while several of these incidents have been reported to the campus community through the Bias Incident Response Team, there are several others that have not been shared in this way. I know this because I've had multiple frustrated and frightened students come to my office to talk to me about their experiences while feeling unwilling and unable to share those experiences with an administration that they perceive to be ineffective, at best, at responding to the increasingly hostile and racist environment that they are dealing with on campus. I heard someone today describe this as a microaggression. I disagree. This is a macroaggression. This is designed to intimidate them and shut them up. While I know that we are a public facility and people from outside could very well be responsible for some of these incidents, I'd like us to understand that this is our collective responsibility as a campus community. These students are tired of daily racism they are forced to endure, and I'm tired of it too. In solidarity and with bone-deep exhaustion, Naima.
12.
Which kind of white person are you?
In the past 24 hours, many posters promoting a rally by our Black Students Focus and others publishing our First People's 5K were destroyed, defaced, and damaged here on campus. The posters promoted events approved and endorsed by the college and that align with our very commitment to creating an inclusive environment and to furthering Evergreen's support of freedom of expression. Incidents like these are outrageous. They convey contempt and disrespect not just of the sponsoring groups, but all members of our campus community. They defy the values upon which Evergreen was founded, they violate our social contract, and are anathema to our shared sense of community. In destroying and defacing the posters, the individuals committing these acts sought to silence the voices of students of color and the many people who support them, thereby depriving these students of their valued space and place in our college. It's unacceptable. This year, we have devoted hundreds of hours to dialogue and concrete actions promoting tolerance and respect for difference. We've created new procedures and mechanisms for addressing incidents of harassment and misconduct on our campus. We've established a college-wide council to develop and launch initiatives that will change the structure and culture at Evergreen. And we've actively intervened and sanctioned acts like these that violate our fundamental values, our social contract. I call on each of us to intervene in any actions we witness that entail demeaning, disrespecting, or devaluing others. I call on each of us, faculty, staff, and students, to acknowledge in dialogue in our programs, classes, and offices the seriousness of these actions and the harm they create within our community and the individuals here at Evergreen. Finally, I call on each of us to repudiate such acts of contempt, disrespect, and hatred. They have no place at Evergreen. Not here, not now, not ever.
13.
Do you sometimes wish you were not white?
Y'all decided to become educators, to hold our futures in your hands. So why aren't you there supporting us? Like, where have you been? Like, as educators, you're there holding our futures. You're there to, like, help us grow. Yet, like, many times we come to you looking for support and we're penalized and we lose credit because we're putting our bodies on the lines because we're taking control of our education. Y'all are educators and, like, we will work with you and stand with you. You also have to work with us. Love, community love. Community love.
14.
Do you hate being white?
At the faculty emeritus meeting 1 year prior, that is, on May 23, 2016, a year to the day before the protests began, the faculty voted on a resolution to include a mandatory inventory on each faculty member's progress on matters of racial equity in their yearly self-evaluations. Naima Lowe gave a statement for this resolution, and Brett Weinstein made a statement against it. The following is a recording of this meeting obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. We will start with Naima's statement first, read by Carolyn Prouty.
Dear colleagues, I apologize for not being able to attend today's faculty meeting. I'm writing to offer some words of support of the resolution put forward by the Diversity and Equity Standing Committee. After the events of last Thursday, which I think hopefully we saw in the email, I am somewhat inclined to suggest that we simply vote on this resolution without much additional conversation. If witnessing the profound impact that racism continues to have on our students, faculty, and staff of color isn't enough to get us to commit to this relatively mild statement, I don't know what will. Several people, including me, gave input on the resolution at various phases, and I believe that it represents sound thinking and thoughtful deliberation. As Carolyn has mentioned, some of us wanted to give this resolution more teeth. For me, that meant including more concrete language outlining specific expectations for participating in faculty development related to equity. However, I understand that this resolution can't encapsulate the full breadth of possible modes of engagement with equity pedagogy, and that our next steps must include actions that will help us define and flesh out this commitment. I also appreciate the efforts that have been made to place this resolution within our CBA as well as our faculty handbook. I believe that this represents a clear commitment to holding ourselves accountable to this resolution on a number of different fronts. This resolution offers us an opportunity for us to have unity as a faculty about issues of collective value and importance. Based on this, I encourage all of us to support this resolution as it will empower us all to move forward with the work we know needs to be done.
15.
Do you like being white?
Brett?
Okay, I would ask everybody to try to hear with fresh ears. What I have to say isn't easy, and I must say I speak in front of you with more nervousness than I think I've ever spoken in front of this faculty. I've spoken to a lot of people about this resolution, members of our faculty, and I've tried to speak to a diverse group. I will say that the public discussion around this issue does not match the private discussion. There is concern behind closed doors amongst many members of our faculty that there are things that cannot be said about this resolution because of the current climate of discussion that we have on our campus regarding diversity and equity. And that is something that should never be the case here. If we speak in good faith, we should always be able to say what we think. Even if it's wrong, we should be able to say it, and we should be able to have colleagues correct us, and then we should be able to recognize that. There should be that kind of open community, and at the moment, it isn't that kind of open community. People are afraid to say what they think about this resolution and others related to it. We have a resolution on the table that is motivated by values that I think are extremely important, and I would be shocked if they weren't shared by everybody in this room. In other words, we all recognize diversity as extremely important, and if we thought about it carefully, we know that you couldn't possibly solve the problems of equity without also solving the problems of racial diversity and other kinds of diversity. So there's no disagreement and there's no resistance on my part to the idea that these values are important, that they deserve our support and our consideration, and that it has to happen year in and year out. I also believe that your self-evaluation is a perfectly valid place to explore those kinds of questions. However, I'm frightened by what I see in this resolution. Not all of it. A lot of it is just fine and I can agree with it, no problem. But the idea that we are going to inscribe in our contract a vague requirement that we reflect on these things in our self-evaluation, which then exposes us to having how well we did that reflection evaluated by our colleagues who are in a position to decide whether or not to retain us on the faculty, to promote us to converted status, that is a really scary prospect. If you've watched the discussion on the poster incident from last week, you know that there is relatively little nuance available to us in a discussion that involves diversity on this campus at this moment. Now imagine that same low level of nuance arising in somebody's conversion panel. That could result in a faculty colleague we should keep not being retained on the faculty because something unfolded that was misunderstood or was hard for them to explain well in their self-evaluation, and therefore when their colleagues went to look at it, felt that they had failed to meet up to their obligations under a contractual agreement. So in an effort to not take more time than is mine to take, I will simply say I am very much in support of our making this a core mission of Evergreen. I believe it is already a core mission of Evergreen, but I am not at all in favor of inscribing it in a contractual way, and I'm even more afraid to do that if the contractual way that we are inscribing it is vague enough that it could later on become something that we don't see coming.
16.
Do you like being with other white people?
We are accountable. We've been sitting on our asses for 40 years, and this is the result. If we were doing what they asked of us, this wouldn't be happening. These people have better shit to do. Yeah. I have better shit to do. This is my fucking day off. I don't come to faculty meeting anymore because of all your racism.
On November 14th, 2016, 2 days before the unveiling of the college's equity plan, in which there is an organizational chart that places Naima Lowe in charge of faculty hiring and development, Naima responded to what I suppose is a satirical Facebook event titled White Liberal Day of Silence. Can I announce this important event at the faculty meeting I'm about to endure? And then 2.5 hours later, she addends, seriously, just be quiet. Only appointed, approved whites can speak, and only when spoken to. Now, if Naima Lowe considers all lives matter hashtags or statements or posters placed on walls to be literally violence, how do we know what side of the double standard she falls upon with statements such as these?
17.
Do you notice when everyone around you is white?
Trial of two stepbrothers who were shot by an Olympia police officer is now underway. Both men are charged with assaulting that police officer, and one is also charged with assaulting an employee at the Safeway store as he tried to steal beer.
Bryson Chaplin comes quickly towards Officer Donald with the skateboard raised.
Stepbrothers Andre Thompson and Bryson Chaplin sat side by side, both on trial for assaulting Olympia police officer Ryan Donald, who then shot both of them.
Coming at him with the skateboard raised up, with the trucks facing down, and fearing that this skateboard was going to be used as a weapon against his person.
When it was time for the defense, Andre Thompson's attorney quickly summed it up for the jury.
The case you are about to hear is about a police officer, a very green police officer, who lost control of his emotion, of himself, and ultimately the situation.
Bryson Chaplin is now in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the shooting. He's also charged with assault for this incident minutes before the shooting. Prosecutors say he threw a case of beer at Safeway employee Tammy Brown as he ran from the store. Members of the community who protested the officer-involved shooting sat in on the trial. Officer Ryan Donald, he was not charged with the crime, and an internal review found he did not break any department policies. You can bet he will be the key witness in this case, and the trial will resume tomorrow morning.
Well, that will be pivotal testimony. Thanks so much, Allison.
18.
Do you notice when there are no white people to be back?
Oh my God. Yeah. I forgot Samantha.
We're all here. I'm not starting.
Squatted up for the homies.
19.
Do you notice when other white people walk into the room?
Two brothers shot by an Olympia police officer 2 years ago was arrested for attacking his brother during a fight over hot wings. Their mother was also arrested after a woman called 911 saying she threatened her with a knife.
It was just after 10:30 last night when Olympia police were called to this downtown apartment complex. The woman who placed the 911 call said she had just been assaulted and threatened by the mother of these men, Andre Thompson and Bryson Chaplin. According to an Olympia police report, the 24-year-old woman claimed Thompson and Chaplin got into a fight over some hot wings and a cell phone when Thompson and another man attacked the wheelchair-bound Chaplin, who lost the use of his legs as a result of the shooting.
The two brothers held my fiance down while they beat him, and the mom attacked me.
The woman told dispatchers as the two men were fighting, their mother, Crystal Chaplin, came after her, hitting her and threatening her.
Yes, she told me if I didn't leave, she would kill me.
Does she have any weapons?
A knife.
Andre Thompson and Crystal Chaplin both appeared in Olympia Municipal Court this morning on domestic assault charges, domestic violence assault charges. They were released. Now, as far as the jury, as far as the trial and the verdict they're awaiting, a jury has told the judge in this case that they're deadlocked, but he's told them to keep trying, and they're expected to be back at it deliberating tomorrow morning.
20.
Do you notice when the last white person leaves the room?
This is State of Washington versus Under Damon Thompson, verdict form 2B. We, the jury, having found the defendant not guilty of the crime of assault in the second degree as charged, or being unable to unanimously agree as to that charge, find defendant Andre Damon Thompson guilty of the lesser crime of assault in the third degree, dated today's date, signed presiding juror. Verdict form 2B. We, the jury, having found the defendant not guilty of the crime of assault in the second degree as charged, or being unable to unanimously agree as to that charge, find the defendant Bryson Tyler Chaplin guilty of the lesser crime of assault in the third degree, dated today's date, signed presiding juror. The State of Washington versus Bryson Tyler Chaplin. We, the jury, find the defendant Bryson Tyler Chaplin guilty of the crime of assault in the fourth degree as charged in count 3, dated today's date, signed presiding juror.
21.
Do you sometimes forget that you were white?
That difference between the capacity to have a prejudice against someone and also versus the capacity to have a power over them, right? We can all be prejudiced
based on our predisposition to believe something, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have power culturally to do anything about it, right? So for example, the concept of reverse racism. I can be prejudiced against white people all day long, right? I know for a fact that I have prejudices, but my ability to assert power based on my social position is really limited. 22.
Do you sometimes forget that other white people are white?
First thing you do is try to come up with a way to not listen. 2 options: go inside, go home. That's it. I don't have time for anything else. I am too tired. This shit is literally gonna kill me.
Do you have a time for an apology?
Go inside or go home.
Go inside or go home. Go inside or go home. Go inside or go home. Go inside or go home.
Whenever people ask me from last year, like, how did you get the students to like do all the stuff that they did and get it done? I say, magic. It's magic. 23.
Are white people forgetful?
That's my favorite.
This is my first quarter at Evergreen. I came from Maryland. I used to live in New Zealand, so I'm used to the weather and I'm used to the white people. I haven't attended class in a couple weeks. I have been losing sleep over this. I feel unsafe on campus, and I want this resolved today. And I came here for my education. I'm passionate about my education. I'm passionate about the interdisciplinary studies that Evergreen has here. As a Black person, I can't distance myself from my own identity enough to even immerse myself in my education, which is what I am here to do. So yes.
24.
Are you white in your memories?
If we don't learn to kind of understand the conscious and unconscious biases about what we think is beautiful, what we think is correct, what we think is appropriate, what we think tells a good story, right? Then those tools are just tools, right? Then you become a tool of the tools. You know, I had my theater director who used to say, singing is controlled screaming, right? And so like, which was great. Like it was really this great sort of like undermining of the idea of like perfect practice that I got very, very young. And I'm very grateful to that and kind of think about that all the time. It's like I care about craft and exactitude, but I kind of don't. Like I think it can just, it's this thing that can back us in a corner. We get like, I don't know. We get very preoccupied with the perfection of a form. And I think it stops thought instead of continues it. So I loved having someone early on who was just like, just scream your head off. Everyone will hear you, that's what matters.